Hello, my friends. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can be with you forever. I'm going to be leaving my email in the description, so if you want a personalized tarot reading or astrology chart reading or anything at all, music production lessons, feel free to hit me up there. And as always, I'll put my Patreon and my YouTube membership program information down below. And I've been kind of out of it the past few weeks, haven't been really doing a lot of content lately, but I'm going to try to, I don't want to make empty promises, but I'm going to make more shit for you. And if you can check out my Patreon too, I also just recently wrote a little essay for my upcoming Hard Vapor Manifesto, which is, I'm working on it, and I'm not sure when it'll ever be published, but I'm definitely working on it over time, especially as I would like to take time to reflect a lot of my ideas. I don't just want to publish something for the hell of it. I want to make sure that it's a, very well put together, truthful piece of work, so that people don't just get lost into a bunch of, pseudo-intellectual, pseudo-spiritual bullshit for, just to make some money, which is what a lot of spirituality is nowadays, unfortunately, but it does get people involved. But that's a different topic, because today I'm going to be talking about something that is, a sensitive subject for a lot of people, specifically amongst the Jewish community. But this is something that's found itself in a lot of different discussions, especially amongst people who are very religious and very, in depth into their spiritual beliefs or relative religious beliefs, so to speak. And this is the debate as to who the Synagogue of Satan is, or what the Synagogue of Satan actually entails. And I want to talk about this because it's usually distorted. The meaning behind that term is very distorted and very misunderstood. And it's also utilized as a way to single out the fake Jews that exist, or whoever the Jews that some certain people do not necessarily accept as being the real Jews, whatever that even means. This is mostly coming from the Black Hebrew Israelites and a lot of Christian groups, specifically because of, in the book of Revelations, he talks about the Synagogue of Satan and the fake Jews, and there will be Jews that say they are Jews, but they are not the real Jews. And for some reason, this is something that the Black Hebrew Israelites are very drawn to, almost to a point for me to believe that they are actually enacting that same prophecy that they're so obsessed about. And, there are a lot of different Jews, a lot of different ethnic Jews in the world from all different kinds of racial backgrounds, because that is who the Jewish people are. The Jewish people are a diaspora. When they colonized Israel and turned it into Palestine, you had all these Jews that basically left, and they went all over the place. They went, a lot of them in Europe, a lot of them throughout the Middle East, a lot of them then traveled through places in Africa. Nigeria, Ethiopia is the biggest one. And there's a lot of different kinds of Jews. So when we say the Synagogue of Satan, the fake Jews, the people pretending to be Jews for the sake of, let's say material benefit, those could be anyone. That could be any Jew, any person. You don't necessarily have to be a legitimate Jew or a fake Jew to be part of that Synagogue of Satan, so to speak. And I think this is the main issue I have with that, is because whoever that is, whoever the Synagogue of Satan is, whoever is worshiping Satan in that way, is a person who does not follow the Jewish faith. They don't follow the Jewish religion. They don't care for the Jewish religion, but they still hold on to the identity of being Jewish or being Israeli or whatever you want to call it, regardless of if they are born into that genetic background or not. It's not really relevant. What is relevant is, what are these people actually doing? Where do they come from? And the truth is that a lot of the Jews that, have let go of Judaism or do not ascribe to it and pursue other means, pursue other worldly desires, worldly possessions in their life, whether that's through business, through banking, through even music, through arts, through anything. Science is included, because they're chasing after things in the world. And what is Satan? Satan is the god of the world. He's the controller of the world. He's the angel that controls the physical world. He's the dungeon master, if you want to call it that, although I won't necessarily pertain Satan as a physical entity or as an actual angel necessarily. It is, these are aspects that are kind of beyond our mode of comprehension. We can read about them in allegorical texts and symbolism, but ultimately, when we're talking about the Synagogue of Satan, or just Satan in general, we're talking about the world. We're talking about the physical world. We're talking about everything that has to do with keeping us trapped in the physical world, because if you do live a spiritual life, you do live a life that's ascended, high vibrational, whatever you want to call it, you leave the world, you leave the physical plane, you leave the world of Satan, if you want to call it that, and you go to the world beyond, whether that's heaven or the fifth dimension or whatever you want to call it is not really relevant. What is relevant is that there is this other world that you pass towards, and that's very much allegorical to the Old Testament, and then Christianity sort of distorted that to symbolize heaven and hell, a very binary system, which isn't necessarily to what I believe in. It's definitely not something that's scriptural in terms of understanding. These are all things that came posthumously after the religion was founded, and then third-party people decided to interpret what the afterlife was, what heaven was, what hell was. And these are very interpretive. These aren't exactly specific things that are necessarily, that we can know about unless we die and then we experience it ourselves. And I think you can learn a lot from people who've experienced near-death experiences. And, that's another topic altogether, is the afterlife. But we're talking about the Synagogue of Satan and the fake Jews. And a lot of these Jews, and I'm not even going to discount other people that are part of the Judeo-Christian narrative. This comes down to Muslims. This comes down to Christians. You can even extend this to Buddhists and Taoists as well, because they're all integral. They're all aiming towards the same direction, which is God, which is ultimately the foundations of Judaism. At its core is understanding the Creator, understanding the source of all life, and being in touch with that acknowledgement and that truth. And so yeah, when we talk about the Synagogue of Satan, it's people who have attached themselves to an idea of spirituality, who are utilizing spirituality for their own selfish goals, right? Don't forget, a synagogue and a church, we kind of equate them as two different things, but they're kind of the same. And when Revelations was written, there weren't Christian churches, there wasn't mosques, there wasn't anything like that, because Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism. It's an appropriation of that religion and turning it into a new religion, which is perfectly fine. But when we want to talk about the Synagogue of Satan, it's anything that has to do with God, anything that's a presentation of God, but ultimately there is a different narrative being played that's fueling a worldly desire, right? So this comes down to, whether it's a rabbi, whether it's a priest, whether it's I don't know the word for a priest in Islam necessarily. I don't know enough about the religion, so I'm not going to comment on them. But there's definitely a lot of priests and rabbis and other spiritual gurus that prey upon the naivety of normal layman people, and they use this image of being a spiritual person, and they basically siphon money out of them. And that's an aspect of the Synagogue of Satan, is because they're using God, they're using religion and spirituality and the truth to possess worldly desires, right? Which goes against the whole notion of being in touch with God anyway, which is to, escape from the world in a sense. Not necessarily escape, but let's say ascend from the world into a higher realm, into a better place. And they're stuck in the world because they're attached to desires, and they feel the need to lie to people, to take advantage of people for money, and mostly in other aspects. This could also come down to pedophilia. That's a big thing in the Catholic Church, but I'm not going to talk too much shit about Catholicism or Protestantism or whatever the fuck, because they all have a lot of value, and they have a lot of deep history, and they're very integral to our society and our world and our cultures, whether you like to think so or not. And they're very important, but you have to recognize that these are religions that are based in Judaism, because Judaism was the first one. It was the first monotheistic religion, arguably, and then there was, maybe Taoism came shortly after, or even before that, when you have Huangdi was the golden emperor of China, who basically that whole narrative happened around the same time Moses led the Exodus, which is also kind of interesting to think about. Both of our religions or cultures are 5,000 years old, roughly. A little bit more than that. But that's another topic, obviously. So yeah, the Synagogue of Satan is that the synagogue, first of all, is the church, right? The synagogue and the church, even though they're two different religions, they're going towards the same place. They're set up in the same manner. And we need to understand that, because it's not just a Jewish synagogue. It encompasses Christianity and Islam and arguably Buddhism and Taoism and every other religion, because the synagogue is just a place of worship, ultimately, right, for God. And because we've existed in the world and understand English, and things have been segregated, so synagogue is attributed to Jewish people, we recognize that, that when we read Revelations and we're interpreting those kinds of texts, that, we're going to be confused a little bit or think differently than what the actual truth was or what the actual intention was when that book was written. I'm not really even sure. I think I've read somewhere that you're not supposed to interpret Revelations or something like that. You're not supposed to discuss it or some shit, which I think is just bullshit. It doesn't say that anywhere. I think that's just, another big church synagogue of Satan thing that's going to try to control the narrative, control the way you think about God, the way you connect with God. It's an attempt to control it so that they can possess power. And that's the Synagogue of Satan, is utilizing religion for power. And we've lived through that for the past 2,000 years. And we're still dealing with that in the Middle East, of people using religion to gain power over people. That's the Synagogue of Satan. You can equate that, yeah, there's Jews that are greedy and pieces of shit. Sure, they're part of it as well. No question. But ultimately, there's bigger forces at play here. There's bigger people. There's bigger agendas going on that are using religion to maintain power. And, you can even extend this to communism as well. Communism was arguably invented by a Jew, Karl Marx, even though he converted, right? So you can sort of see that it's sort of a Jewish offshoot that was appropriated by people who wanted to possess power. And you see that in pretty much every communist country, is a centralization of power and people utilizing this movement that's supposed to be above the physical world, right? Because communism's goal is to enact a utopic state, basically, where everyone's happy and everything's nice. So it's basically trying to get to heaven. That's ultimately the goal of communism. So in a way, it's kind of godly, even though it's an atheistic religion to an extent. But people are still utilizing that to gain power. And that's also, you can say, is the Synagogue of Satan. And, I'll touch upon this as well. There's a lot of Jews out there, specifically Jews who are atheist or don't really hold any spiritual attachment or spiritual interest at all in Judaism and what Judaism has to offer, but they still want to claim the bold presentation of being ethnically Jewish, even though they completely disregard its entire culture and entire history as being like, oh, that's a bunch of bullshit. And I know a lot of Jews who say shit like that, but they still want to maintain the Jewish identity while still throwing out their cultural bedrock, their cultural roots, which I wouldn't necessarily call that Synagogue of Satan. I would just call that you're just a fake Jew. you're just utilizing your ethnic background as a means to sort of make yourself feel special, even though you're not even giving your own background the respect it deserves. You're not giving your own culture, a culture that's been cultivated for thousands of years, and you just kind of want to toss it aside as being like, oh yeah, that's bullshit, I don't believe in God. And you can do that if you want. That there's no one's stopping you, but you will be cut off, right? That's the whole thing in the Bible. You will be cut off from your people. And people like that need to recognize that they are doing disrespect to their own culture, and they need to just acknowledge that, yeah, they don't identify with it. So then they could stop identifying as being Jewish. Then it's no different than if I'm Chinese and I hate everything about China and I emigrate to the US and I become an American citizen. I'm going to start calling myself an American. And if people say like, oh, but you're Chinese, I'm like, no, I'm not Chinese anymore. I'm American. I emigrated here. I'm an American person. A lot of people have done that. A lot of people have done that, especially in Europe, who've emigrated to America, particularly in the early 20th century, late 19th century, who wanted to cut ties with Europe and anything to do with Europe, and they became fully American. And that's why when you talk to Americans, they don't really attribute much to their ethnic background. They're not really going to tell you like, oh yeah, I'm part Swedish, part Polish, whatever. I mean, they would if they're interested in that, but mainly they identify as just an American person, right? That's how they're seen. That's how they're viewed. That's a different topic, but yeah, I just wanted to talk about that, cover that a bit, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.